Hi, everyone. I'm Lamia, the community manager at SeedStars, and on behalf of my team, I'm thrilled to welcome you all to this panel discussion. Today, we have an exciting panel for you, um, designed for you, and we're joined by global leaders in the industry to discuss and share the opportunities and challenges in advancing gender equity through green jobs. At the end of the discussion, um, we will also have a Q&A session, and I invite you all to engage with our amazing panelists by sharing your thoughts and questions in the comment section. But before we jump into the panel, I would like to talk a little bit about who we are. At SeedStars, our mission is to have an impact on emerging markets through technology and entrepreneurship. And we do this by backing entrepreneurs with know-how, community, and capital. We believe that high growth companies are the best way to address some of the major social, environmental, and economic challenges. And so all our activities revolve around supporting the entrepreneurs driving this change. Through SeedStars programs, we and talents, we offer comprehensive support and training throughout their journey. And with SeedStars Capital, we invest in high growth companies to help them scale and succeed. This has resulted in some truly remarkable collaborations, and we've launched innovative programs and run them designed to accelerate solutions related to gender equity and also to foster climate resilient solutions. With various organizations, including UN Women, GIZ, Growth Africa, and Impact Linked Finance Fund Partner, to implement programs that promote gender equity and climate resilience. Additionally, with our community initiatives, we foster connections among ecosystem players through our events and co-working spaces. Our initiatives are strengthened by an incredible community of investors, mentors, and other stakeholders with diverse expertise and unwavering dedication. Today's discussion on advancing gender equity through green jobs is not just timely, it is crucial in shaping a more inclusive and sustainable economy. By empowering women and promoting green jobs, we can drive innovation and create new opportunities and hopefully build a more resilient and equitable society for all. But without further ado, I am excited to invite our moderator for this session, Sabrina Salama, Head of Partnerships for the MENA region at SeedStars. Thank you for joining us again today. Over to you, Sabrina.
Much. Okay, all here. Thank you so much, Lamia, for this introduction, and thank you for all of you to be here and for our panelists to be here with us today. So I'm Sabrina. As Lamia presented me, I'm the head of MENA partnerships at SeedStars. I've been working at SeedStars for almost 4 years now. Very happy to be with you here because the topic that we're going to tackle today is a topic that is also very important to SeedStars, very important to our mission and to the work that we want to be doing on a daily basis by supporting entrepreneurs in emerging markets, especially women entrepreneurs, and especially trying to fulfill our mission of supporting them into various sectors, and one of them obviously is the sustainable sector and the green job sector. So the way we're going to go today for our panel, I will be moderating. We're going to start with some quick facts about the importance of gender equity in green jobs. Afterwards, we're going to ask our panelists to introduce themselves, and then we're going to move to the discussion, which the point is really to have like a very lively discussion between the panelists that I'm going to moderate, but we don't just want it to be like something very strict. It's going to be very lively, hopefully. So let us start with a few facts for you to understand why this topic is an important topic to tackle and why do we believe that it's important for us today to talk about gender equity in green jobs. It's important to highlight that today, women are more vulnerable to the effects of climate change, comprising 80% of those displaced by climate-related disasters. So this is data by the World Bank that really can showcase to us the importance of such a topic. Women make up the majority of the world's 1.3 billion poor who are affected by environmental degradation and lack access to resources and opportunities for adaptation. Today, the studies are showing us that when women are involved in decision-making processes, environmental policies are way more effective and sustainable. Hence why also it's very important for us to have women on the table today and women participating to the panel, because this is exactly what the studies are showing, that it's important to involve women into the discussion. Moreover, investing in women's education and economic empowerment has been linked to lower carbon emissions and greater resilience when it comes to climate impacts. So all of these elements are really showcasing to us the importance of having women on the table. However, women are today underrepresented in high potential climate friendly sectors. Only 32% of jobs in the renewable energy workforce, and they're representing a mere 23% of managers in water utilities. Moreover, there is a study in 2023 that was published that is indicating that 85% of training for green skills was imparted to men, which showcased the huge gender disparity in this field. So all of this data is really showcasing to us the disparity that we have when it comes to the topic of gender equality through green jobs, and why it's important for us today to try to kind of articulate and understand what's behind these numbers. Why is it like that? And what could we potentially do to improve the current state of the situation when it comes to gender equality through green jobs. So what we're going to do right now is that we're going to move to an introduction of our panelists, because again, our panelists are going to allow us to reflect, and they are going to help us understand all of the different matters that are linked to this topic. So I'm going to let the panelists introduce themselves. I think it's very important. So I'm going to give you 1 minute each. If you can just like give us a high-level introduction of who you are, what do you do, and potentially why is this an important topic for you. So we're going to start with Shalini. So Shalini, if you want to start with your introduction.
Thank you so much, Sabrina, for this opportunity to talk about a topic which is very, very close to my heart. So I'm the founder of Nadi, She for Climate. Nadi in many Indian languages means river, and river is also revered as a god, and it kind of transforms wherever it kind of touches. So that's the whole essence behind this. But I'll tell you a little bit about the context of why I started this. It's because that I've been in a corporate career for almost 17, 18 years. And then when I wanted to build something purposeful, I wanted to kind of focus on environmental space. And I started doing that, and then was speaking to many young, seasoned professionals. One thing which came to the forefront was many of them wanted to come to the climate space, but they were just trying to kind of navigate that path because it was either too tough, or they did not have the right guidance, or they didn't have the right confidence to kind of take on a new job or a new career space, right? So that was how this Nadi She for Climate began its journey in February this year. We are currently about 200 odd members in our community, and the focus here is to upskill them, mentor them, give them the right opportunities to become climate leaders and decision makers. And we have a very lofty mission to empower 100,000 women within the next decade to become climate leaders, decision makers. So that's a little bit about me. Hope I've kind of stuck to my 1 minute.
Thank you so much, Shalini, and thank you very much for this introduction. We'll definitely get the opportunity to dig deeper into also your mission during the discussion. Now we can move to Carrie. Carrie, if you want to take a minute to tell us about yourself.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. My name is Carrie Bojanin. I'm the founder of the Rallying Cry. Shalini, where were you 25 years ago when I was trying to transition into a green job? I actually am a recovering lawyer. I used to practice mergers and acquisitions many, many, many years ago for what is now the largest law firm in the world. But I actually wanted to get back to the whole reason that I went to law school, which was to be a change maker and an advocate for for the planet and for people. And so for the last 20 years plus, I've been working in the sustainable finance space for the most part, really trying to say, how can we leverage capital for better outcomes for people and planet? Probably the last 8 years or so, I've been really focusing on gender finance, women's economic empowerment, and then adding the climate element to it. Within the sustainable finance conversation. And most recently, over the last 3 years or so, I've been running this little outfit called the Rallying Cry, which is about catalyzing private sector investment at the intersection of gender and climate in Africa. And we've started with agribusiness, but we're not exclusively working in ag. And just really excited to be here to talk about women in the workforce and as part of the solutionaries that we need when we're thinking about climate and what's happening with the planet. So I think I'm there in just a minute. So I'll hand back to Sabrina. Excited to be here.
Thank you so much for that. I also really love how our panel complements each other. I think it really makes sense. So it's lovely to have you with us. And I mean, the perfect addition to both of you is also Maëlys. So Maëlys, I'm going to give you 1 minute to introduce yourself and tell us how your presence on this panel is also of relevance. So the floor is yours.
Thanks, Sabrina, and hi everyone. It's a pleasure to be here in such great company in particular. So I'm Maëlys, I'm the managing partner of the Catalyst Fund, and Catalyst Fund is an early stage venture capital fund and accelerator investing for a climate resilient future in Africa. So we invest in particular on climate adaptation and resilient solutions across a range of sectors, because we believe every sector of the economy will have to adapt to the impacts of climate change. And as we do that, we embed a gender lens in everything we do. So we have a target for women founded startups that we want to back, and also for solutions that benefit women at the local level in their respective countries. And our leadership team also of the fund is primarily women. There's actually only one man, my partner. He loves it, I will assure you. And before this, I've been investing across emerging markets, especially in Africa, for over a decade. Across sectors, so fintech, agriculture, access to finance more broadly, or logistics. And we always, through the years, also had a very strong gender lens. So really excited to be here and learn from the other panelists and also complement their experience with what we're seeing from an investor perspective.
Thank you so much, Maëlys. Thank you to the three of you. Again, thank you for your time and for accepting our invitation to be here. I must say that I'm very proud of the team for putting together such a very, very strong panel. And I think I'm sure that we're very honored to have you with us. And I'm sure that our discussion is going to be very fruitful. So let's start the discussion. Shalini, I'm going to start with you with a kind of general question, but because I think it's very important for us to set the context again of our discussion. So could you tell us what is the relationship between gender inequality and climate change according to your point of view?
Yeah, so I think we all know for a fact that climate change does not impact everyone equally. That's a given fact. And most of the time, gender is a critical intersection in climate change, but most of the time this has been overlooked as something very softer. And because we focus on more deeper technological solutions or mitigation measures, but we don't really look anything through gender lens, right? But what you're missing in this is, I'm talking more from a regional context, but I think it will resonate with a lot of us here, is women, especially at the front line, are more impacted by climate change than anybody. I can give you a few case studies which probably will resonate with people. So, for example, Sundarbans, which is Bay of Bengal, the Bengal area, it has been prone to climate change disasters like flooding and all those things. So in those times, what happens, the men go away for work and women then have to kind of cater it themselves. So they have to do all the heavy lifting. And then they have to find ways to kind of solve for it. So it's never, the onus becomes women's, right? Similarly, for example, when we look at, say, coal industry is slowly getting phased out, you will see men probably getting get a upcycling training access than women, and the women are then left to their own devices, right? So I think so. One is on the climate vulnerability side, which is very clear that they are, have to bear the brunt of it. But also on the solution side, it's never that women are given the first opportunity to do the training because they have got other priorities or other responsibilities at home. So capacity building, training opportunities, access to funding, all becomes secondary because it's never equal. And they don't even get access, or they neither do they have their awareness that they have, say, access to policies and stuff like that. So from a climate perspective, the gender inequality is very, very evident. One, because they are in the front line, and secondly, it's also because they are not made aware of solutions or mitigation measures due to lack of multiple things, lack of education, capacity building, and multiple things. But I think that's one of the very critical reasons. I think there's still this inequality which exists, and also we look at it very softer, and we never look things through gender lens because we kind of keep it aside.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. I think it's extremely important indeed to highlight like how unfair the exposure it is for women when it comes to these particular topics, and that they don't necessarily get the same opportunities and the same exposure. And I think you were able to brilliantly highlight it in your response. So thank you so much for that. So building on this, I want to ask you a question, Maïlis, given your major role into the investment space and how you're really giving importance to gender and to green jobs, etc. So could you tell us in what ways do you think that green jobs actually contribute to empowering women in emerging markets? And if you want to like focus on sectors like agri-tech, insurtech, fintech, just like as examples, but mainly just tell us like how do green jobs contribute to empowering women in emerging markets?
Absolutely. I love this question because as much as indeed there's a big inequality when we think of climate impacts and the fact that women will suffer the brunt of the consequences of climate change, women are also leaders in climate action, right? They're agents of change. They're agents in the climate fight, especially in the local communities. And we're seeing this over and over again across our portfolio companies. So for example, if we think of agriculture, like we invested in several agri-tech solutions, anywhere from precision agriculture with soil sensors to satellite data imagery that helps farmers reduce, for example, water consumption and use better fertilizers that are organic over time and therefore increase yields, to other types of sort of market access solutions. What we're seeing is that the beneficiary or the users of such solutions tend to be women, at least either over 50% of the users are women, or let's say the large majority, over 40%. And an example of this is a company in Uganda where 77% of women are engaged in agricultural work. And a company we invested in called AgroSupply provides these women with a layaway payment system. So basically a save to buy product coupled also with insurance, so era yield insurance, that allows them to purchase drought-resistant seeds and other high-quality inputs that then also increase yield and therefore increase income. So this kind of solution sees the woman as empowered to basically utilize a different kind of solution that is going to benefit them and their families. We know also from the history, I think working in development and also microfinance, that women tend to be more cautious around use of money, use of finances, and decision making that benefits the whole family. And we see that these women are making the right decisions, right, in terms of also use of these drought-resistant seeds, organic fertilizers, and the benefit that in turn they realize. So their incomes have actually grown by $55, which is actually significant in terms of their monthly income. So that's just an example, right? It's a beneficiary, but also an agent of change, an agent of action. Similarly, another company we invested in the insurance space, called Assuraf in Senegal, and insurance penetration across the continent is still less than 3%. In women in particular, tend to have less access to insurance product. And we're seeing that thanks to a digital platform that sort of makes it much more accessible, easy to use, affordable, and integrates sort of all the steps from KYC to claim management system, etc., in ways that are easily understood and sort of designed also with a human user in mind, that this disproportionately benefits women users. And currently, women represents over 50% of the insurance policies covered, by this company. So, in essence, when we think about green jobs, whether it's in the agriculture space or in climate insurance or in land restoration also to fight desertification, for example, is one where typically women are really involved, or water, water conservation, water access. Again, they're all sectors where women have traditionally played a big role and continue to play a role. And so solutions that target these areas, these sectors, will benefit them, and they will also be empowered to leverage basically their existing strengths to do more in terms of climate action and the climate fight.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Very interesting. And I mean, sometimes it would feel, I don't know if it would feel quite obvious or sound quite obvious, but we can really see when women are in this position of leadership, or when they get the opportunity to be exposed to this type of initiatives, this type of jobs, how the difference can be way, way bigger. So I think it's very interesting. And this makes me jump to my next question to Carrie, where I want to understand a bit, how do you think sustainable finance initiatives that actually prioritize gender equality and social inclusion within green job sector? So how can these initiatives prioritize gender equality, and how can they really make gender equality a cornerstone of their mission?
Thanks for the question, Sabrina. First of all, what is a green job sector anyway, right? Sophie Lambin of Kite Insights, she's a longtime friend and partner of the Rallying Cry, and she also is a creator of HURD, H-U-R-D, which is a B2C app, which is about integrating climate into the workplace and every job. She says every job is a green job or a climate job. And just given where the direction of travel is going for the planet, I'm inclined to believe this and agree with this. I think almost every job does need to be a climate job or a green job. I don't think we can have sustainable finance initiatives that don't prioritize gender equality and social inclusion. Sustainability and future-proofing go hand in hand, right? We can't do either without 50% of the planet. And we need more inclusive approaches that take into account more diverse lived experiences, talent, and knowledge, especially from the front lines of climate change. If we're not looking at gender, in my book, and I've seen this in much of my work over the last 8 years or so, we're leaving money on the table. Women will hold over $72 trillion of wealth in the next few years and are already making more than 80% of household decisions. The female economy is larger than India and China's combined economies. So we need to see more participation of women in the formal economy and workplace in general. But we're also, as you mentioned, Sabrina, starting to see that the companies and countries even led by women tend to do better on the environment and climate. And that women in the investment portfolios of climate and gender vehicles, like the Catalyst Fund, tend to be the first movers, the early adopters, and the innovators when it comes to green economy and climate approaches. So to me, it makes sense to create linkages between women and the green economy. And we should always be thinking about prioritizing gender equality and social inclusion. And there's a number of ways that we could do that. We'll probably come on to those. And just a final point I need to plug is we can't only be talking about green jobs. I also want to just mention blue jobs and the entire ocean economy, and the fact that the planet is actually 2/3 made of water. And somehow when we're talking about climate change, we're not really talking about ocean change. We have to talk about the ocean economy and the lack of women in it. But that's a whole different discussion for another time. So I'll pause there. I'm sure we'll come back and pick up on some of these points as we go. Back to you, Sabrina.
Thank you so much for that. I loved the every job is a climate job, and it actually makes so much sense. It's definitely a very agile and very versatile concept that can be plugged in to everything, I think. And I think that's actually the work that should be made when it comes to changing mentalities and mindsets, is that climate is just not like a standalone concept, but it's a concept that should be in everything that we do now. So I think that's a very interesting point, and thank you so much for that. So building on this again, Shalini, I'm going to move to you and I'm going to ask you, how can we actually build collaborative ecosystems that can support women advancements and leadership in the green economy, and particularly in emerging markets, because these are like very fragile markets. So what's your take on that?
So I'm going to just build on Carrie. So I'm going to say it's both green and blue. So when we will build collaborative ecosystem, it has to be green and blue. So if I have to look at a collaborative ecosystem, and drawing from my experience of building Nadi, so there, I look at three main players who need to be part of it to kind of build it. Right? One is, of course, say government, private institutions, and of course the community members, women, are three important players in this, right? So um, one of the things which we have seen, and I think this is true for not just for climate job, but for any job, is that most of, at least I would say, majority of the climate jobs, at least the technical ones, require STEM education. And that is where we start, right? And we are very, very low on STEM education. So I think that is the first area to plug. So which means academia, universities, they all play a big role to play. Got a big role to play. The second part of it is, okay, if you're not main course, main STEM person, but there are so many other ways women can contribute to a climate job. Maybe it could be marketing, communications, other non-technical job, but transferable skills. But we still, even there, we need to educate, get the right capacity building so that they can talk about climate, they're more fluent on climate language. And the other important aspect is the employers also play a very big role, right? So they also have to invest in, say, women employees, so that when you have a green job, could be, say, if you're a bank, or a bigger company, have a ESG division or a sustainability division, and always look, and you want to look for someone with sustainability jobs or sustainability skills, have the right investment done, so that right from your junior level staff, they can start getting more how do I say, aware about that subject. And then as they grow to become leaders, they are much more confident and familiar with this topic, right? So I think the capacity building is a first topic I would say is very, very important. The second aspect of this is policies, right? That is where government, public policy, all of them come into play. I think the investment in women, especially in moving to a green job, having the right capacity building institutes, or helping them with finance to kind of educate themselves, is all very important. And the policy revisions has to also happen to kind of facilitate it. Even at an employer level, I think they could also kind of revisit their policies and not nitpick on some of the things which is not existing, say in a women's CV, but look at the potential, what the person can contribute to, and of course invest in that person, skill, train them, and kind of take them on board. And the last aspect I would say is, while this collaborative system is very important by getting the right players, we also have to continuously measure of the different initiatives we put together, and refine it, and keep, changing our course if it is not working. But it is very important that all the players, have an equal part to play, and that is how you can build a collaborative system. So you need to have access to the right mentors, peer learning. There are so many ways this collaborative ecosystem can support each other. And the most important thing I would say, as an underlying foundational level, is also build a network of women who can support each other. They can mentor each other. There's so much of peer learning which can happen. So I think these are different blocks, I would say, in a collaborative ecosystem which can help in women moving into the green space if they're not already moved.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I think it's very clear. My biggest takeaway from what you just said is that it cannot be just like a one player role. Everyone has to be involved, and it has to be very inclusive. And we need to very much have that also on the political agenda of states, etc., so that we can really have a real push towards a more inclusive space. So thank you so much for this. And given that my question to you, Shalini, was about like collaborative ecosystems, in these ecosystems, obviously we have investors, and investors are usually very important to make sure that like money is being injected into the right companies and the right support is provided. So that's why my next question is for you. And could you tell me what strategies can investors like you adopt to prioritize gender inclusive investments in the climate tech sector?
Great, and couldn't agree more also with the comments Carrie and Shalini just made. It's definitely, capital is also, just one side of the equation, right? We really have to think holistically about everything else in the system that is needed to really provide support and grow women entrepreneurship and women-led businesses. So before answering your question, I just want to begin with some statistics, because I think it's quite staggering. So last year in Africa, women-led startups received a mere 2% of all VC capital, right? So 98% went to male-led or co-led businesses and 2% to women. And yet, as investors, obviously, we care about big trends, we care about growth, we care about impact, of course, but also, what sort of scalability the startups are going to achieve. And research has shown over and over again that gender diverse investment team and also women-led businesses actually deliver higher returns, 20% higher net IRRs in global emerging markets on average. We know that if women were to participate in the economy as equally as men, global GDP could rise between 3 and 6%. Boosting the economy like overall basically to $5 trillion. So these are very significant numbers. And we also know that female participation in boards and leadership positions tends to improve when it comes to climate in particular, the environmental impact that companies have, the energy efficiency, and also a matter of ESG, like better governance, social inclusion, etc. So given all of this, it's quite staggering to see that funding still remains at 2%. So what can the investor do better? I think a couple of things. Oftentimes, investors will say there's not enough pipeline, there's not enough women founders building businesses that we can invest in. But I do think a lot of it actually lies in our own processes. So one thing is to making sure that the way that processes to select and search for companies that the investors employ are gender inclusive. So one, for example, could be collecting information on every single startup in a very objective way, and to gain a comprehensive understanding of both the risk and growth opportunities that each business has. Because what we are seeing over and over again, and frankly, I experienced it myself as a woman fund manager, is that women tend to be asked questions about risk and not as much questions about growth. It's always about what's your risk mitigation? Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Whereas, conversely, for a men-led business, tends to be all about potential scalability. So that's one. And also the intentionality to find women-led businesses. So present, for example, the way that your fund invests in a way that will attract women, that feels less maybe foreign or inaccessible, right, to women, is another strategy. Connecting with other women leaders in the ecosystem that are in contact with women entrepreneurs, accelerators, incubators, right? The ecosystem has so many pieces of the puzzle that an investor can connect with to really extend their reach, right, to women-led startups. Then second is to have a pretty objective and hands-on way to actually assess a woman entrepreneur ability to improve their startups over time. So whether that is via technical assistance programs or venture building or very hands-on support that investors will provide anyway as part of their portfolio support strategies, gives them insight into that ability to grow, meet milestones, and stick to a plan, right? And sort of actually, again, assess the business in a very objective way, alongside other male-led ventures. And then finally, having predefined criteria, how can you determine and assess a company upfront with criteria they're pretty clear and apply to everyone, right? So the way that you filter, the way that you score, even your companies, whether you believe in scorecards or not, there's obviously different views on this topic, but still having a way to assess things in an objective manner, I think is very important, because a lot of the issues that we're seeing boil down to bias, right? There's still a lot of bias playing against women that should not be there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I think that like one of the main things that we can understand from all of what you presented here is that these are efforts that really need to be structured. Like it cannot just be taken for granted that right now I'm going to include a gender lens into my investment, into how do I do my due diligence, into how I source and screen. It really has to be structured. There need to be a real reflection behind how I'm integrating these tools, right? So I think it's also very important to make sure that like people are aware of the fact that it's time, it's commitment, it's an investment to be able to include women into the equation. So thank you so much for that. And maybe Carrie, with the next question, you're gonna help us understand a bit better how can we also improve that, and if you can help us understand the role that circular economy principles play in promoting gender equality within the green economy, and how can potentially business leverage them to create inclusive workplaces. So if that sounds okay.
I'm smiling and laughing, Sabrina, because when as I'm listening to that question, I'm like, I actually don't even know how to answer that. So I'm going to think about that in the back of my head, while in the meantime, I say a few things to kind of double click on what Melis was just saying. First of all, Melis, I'm torn between wanting to just cede my time and just be like, you take it, you keep talking, because I was pretty much going to say everything that you were going to say. And it's more fun to hear it from you than to hear myself talking. And also because we are singing from the same song sheet, I'm reminded of how many times I've been told I should connect with you. And so coming to Shalini's conversation about building an ecosystem, here we are in the same ecosystem, and I'm really delighted to be in the same space with people who are so closely aligned. I mean, even using the same statistics, and I love your very practical sets of examples of what investors could do. I think it's, I think the work that you're doing is really important. Melis, in the Catalyst Fund, I think the rallying cry, we're doing something very similar, which is really trying to create these capital linkages and get these women on the front lines of climate change the access to the resources that they need to grow and scale their businesses. But if we just zoom out for a minute from the front lines of climate change and go all the way back out across the capital spectrum, and we're thinking about climate and gender jobs globally, there's just so many different things happening. And the word that you just said, Melis, that makes me think was bias. And I want to tell you a little story about packaging and how labels and bias actually make a difference. So if we look at the big institutional players and ratings agencies like Moody's and S&P, for example, we see that they're scooping up and buying companies that specialize in modeling climate risk right now, because everybody's trying to get their heads around climate risk and economic correlations and what's happening, where are things going, and how much is it going to cost, right? And part of it is the opportunities and being there to jump on them, and part of them is what risk are we opening ourselves to by failing to recognize the opportunities? But I don't see very many people, especially in their modeling, looking specifically at gender in the equation. And so I think this is particularly interesting. A friend of mine and a mentor and another old friend of the rallying cry, Sharon McPherson, started this thing called the Green Jobs Machine, which was literally meant to create a best-in-class climate resilience tool with modeling to help frontline communities understand risk and where the jobs and workforce need to go, particularly for at-risk and vulnerable segments of the population, which of course includes quite a few women. And it's interesting because this is a really fit for purpose and needed approach, but they struggled to raise the capital for the platform. So then they got clever and they rebranded and they came out as Resilience Technologies. And voila, they're selling the same technology to a big financial services institution that has over 4 trillion under management. $4 trillion under management, because they took out this part about trying to help at-risk vulnerable populations and women. It's the same technology, it's the same approach, they just branded it differently because there is so much bias across the capital spectrum against investing in women because of the perceived levels of risk or just lack of understanding. And so this is one way that she's working to shift capital at scale into this green job creation. And I think we need to be thinking about the problem of how do we get investors to do things differently in many different ways. As Melis, gave some very practical examples. These things are really important, but it's also coming back to what Shalini was saying, is using all the different levers and platforms for entry. Sometimes it is engaging at the private sector level, and sometimes you have to go to places that you didn't want to go to try and get the change, or you could get it in surprising places. Sometimes it is working with policymakers and government to try and level the playing field in some instances. And many times it is indeed about collaborative approaches with civil society and with community-based approaches. I think the challenge with dealing of this inextricably interlinked two-sided coin of gender inequality and climate change is that in order to get climate solutions, we do need a diverse set of perspectives and voices and lived experiences. And that means indeed taking an ecosystem approach to driving change and results wherever we can. So didn't quite answer your question specifically, Sabrina, about the circular economy, but I did manage to talk myself into a circle. So, hey, something was achieved.
No, but that's amazing. And thank you so much for that. I think, again, the point of diversity and how it's important to have different voices on the table is extremely important. And hence why also it makes a lot of sense with regards to the panel that we have today, because you all have your very specific sector of expertise, but you all complement each other. So you're kind of a tiny ecosystem on its own. And I think it's very important. So, before we move to questions, I'm gonna ask you a last question, and I'm gonna give you the space to the three of you to give us your input based on your area of expertise. It's obviously something that we've answered along the questions, but I really want that as a closing remark. If it can be like a reflection about, again, how important it is to be intentional about integrating gender considerations in climate action, and how gender inclusive approaches are primordial to building a sustainable future. So if you could just give me your input in 2 minutes about that, and then we're going to move to the questions. Okay, Shalini, if you want to start.
So I think there are, I'll probably put it in two parts, right? One, like the word you use, intentional, right, Sabrina? Many of the measures or initiatives or whatever we do, including, say, DEI initiatives, which a company does, unless it is very intentional that I want to, say, empower women in my company, or I want to kind of promote, I want to do capacity building, and not just do for metric sakes, I think that makes a big difference to looking at inclusiveness of, say, gender into, say, into whatever we're doing as solutions, right? So I think the intention has to be there when we are coming up with any kind of initiatives or approaches in adopting climate solution. The second part of this, or the second aspect, I would say, is women are very holistic thinkers. And sometimes, it's very important to kind of have them at the decision-making table at different stages for it, where whatever we are doing, and not just as a participant. So I think when we start bringing women to the decision-making table, the contribution is much higher. It's much more holistic. So I would say two things. So just to summarize, right? One is be very intentional in doing whatever we are doing in terms of including women, focused initiatives. The second is make them part of the decision-making process and not just a participatory element.
Thank
Those
you.
are the 2 cents. Yeah.
Thank you so much for this. Maëlys, if you want to go ahead.
Yes, absolutely. So I think for me, the main reflections, I think, as Carrie also hinted at earlier, is that we cannot think about investing in climate solutions and frankly in any solutions without having also a gender lens. Because not only you're leaving value on the table, but it just makes business sense. Like it's, for everything we know already, all the data points at this, all the evidence has already told us this. So it's really about now intentionally, so yes, intentionality again, trying to, in all aspects of society, whether it's education, whether it's access to opportunity to enter entrepreneurship or investing, so provision of capital or other types of support, right, to women entrepreneurs, actually take action to make sure that those opportunities are equally distributed. And if we do that, I think everyone stands to benefit. The economies will grow. There will be more cohesive society, more inclusion. And again, those are all things that I'm not making up myself, right? They've been proven over and over again. So the key message for me is that this is a must and it makes business sense. So we all should just roll up our sleeves and figure out our strategies to do it.
Thank you so much, Maëlys, for this. Carrie, if you want to give us your input as well.
Bummer to have to go last after these two very profound sets of insights and reflections. Look, maybe I'll just speak a little bit more generally. I think that women have an amazing opportunity and capacity to be and lead the change that the world needs through their work, through their entrepreneurship, and through their leadership. And there are so many ways that we can think about this. Coming back to what Maëlys was saying is we don't always need to think about women as victims of climate change. They really are the agents of change. I always talk about, women on the front lines of climate change are not beneficiaries just sitting there with their hands out, right? They are the solutionaries driving the change. And they might lack platform or the resources or the finances or even the sleep that they need. But that's where people like Maëlys and the Catalyst Fund and the Rallying Cry come in, is just to connect them to the resources and platforms that they need. I think we have to think about things in terms of language sometimes. Women are contributing to the green economy and sustainability in so many ways, but might not use the same language that we do. It's their reality, their lived experience. They're just showing up every day, filling a big gap that the market has left a big hole for them to stand in. And so it really is just about access to capital and markets, the technical expertise, and sometimes a seat at the table. If we are looking for sustainable solutions for the planet and building climate resilience, then I think, and this is a big part of the work that we do, is we also think that you need to look at personal resilience, and particularly for women. And we've talked about this, that women around the world face a whole extra set of challenges and responsibilities that their male counterparts just don't have because of cultural norms, traditions, legal regimes. A lot of our work is about supporting these change-making and trailblazing women in the green economy to put on their own oxygen masks, to build more bench depth and bandwidth around them, to prioritize their self-care. I know it sounds a bit woo-woo, but it is about creating more balance in their lives because they are already powerful, passionate, and committed leaders, but you can't pour from an empty cup. And so, yes, we can think about the role of women in all of this, whether that's participation in the workforce and the economy or driving the green economy, but we also need to focus on not just the development of future leaders, but on sustaining the ones that are already there. And I think that's an important piece of the work is not just getting them the access and the finance or the ecosystem around them. We actually have to look at sustaining them as the leaders of change. And I think that's important and often as much overlooked as gender is.
Thank you very much for this, and thank you to the three of you for giving us your input on this closing remark. I think it only makes sense and it complements all of the elements that you were able to share with us. We got quite a lot of questions on the different platforms, so we're going to take like 6 minutes to answer a few. So the team extracted the questions for me, so I'm trying to select a few that are not redundant to what we've actually said during the discussion. So there is one question that says, how can I communicate the importance of gender equity to my team and stakeholders effectively? And feel free, whoever wants to answer.
I would say start by writing down everything Melis said with her statistics. That's always powerful.
That's too kind. But yeah, I was going to say data is your best friend, right? So actually use evidence, use data points so that it doesn't feel like you're just taking a stake or, a side, but actually have true proof points like in your argument. And frankly, they can be refuted or rebutted very easily. So in my experience, data has been very helpful, examples and these numbers actually in convincing people.
Thank you. Go ahead, Shani, if you want to.
No, I would echo the same thing. Data is a very, very good way to kind of convince people. But I would also add on to say that if the person is working in a company, there could be so many use cases which the person has seen day in and day out. Use those and kind of talk about how it has made a difference to the company or the organization the person is working for. So.
Thank you so much for this. We have another question from Darlene Gering. She's asking, I think, Carrie, this question is for you. How can we best access into the trillions of dollars Carrie mentioned to invest into other women to address the climate crisis? So it can be Maydis or Carrie. Huh?
I think that's the big question, right? I mean, how do we unlock capital and have it be invested with a gender lens toward dealing with and facing head on the climate crisis? And I think we just have to keep looking across the capital spectrum to see where are the different relevant points of intersection that we can find a way in. Using the different types of vehicles to always build a climate and gender lens in. And part of that goes back to the earlier question about how can we get people across the investor spectrum to want to invest at that intersection of gender and climate. So I think it is just using all means possible with every type of vehicle that's out there. Sometimes it's converting climate finance to add the gender lens. Sometimes it's working with gender lens investors to make sure that they bolt that climate lens onto it. And it's also focusing on a growing number of vehicles that are specifically focused at that intersection of gender and climate, like the Catalyst Fund, and using those demonstration cases. It is about data, it is about evidence, and it is about storytelling. The case studies and the examples of what works, what is possible. It is a bit ridiculous that we know what's happening to the planet. We know what the statistics are and the data are about women and the performance and returns. And somehow it's still not enough, which is insane. But the more we can tell those stories and give those examples of the money that will be left on the table, the value that is going to be missed out on, the better we can access, the bigger parts of the trillions that Darlene is mentioning in her question. And thanks for the question, Darlene. Hello.
Thank you so much for this. There is a last question that I want us to tackle that is not necessarily directed or directly related to the topic. There is a link, but I want to take the opportunity to ask it because we have three brilliant, very successful women with us in the call. And I think if the person asked that question, then it must ring a bell. So the question is, how can I create a workplace culture that supports work-life balance, particularly for women who might have caregiving responsibilities? So if you have like a quick input or recommendations to give on that, it would be lovely. Whoever wants to start. Maëlys, Shalini?
Sorry, you were saying how do we create a workplace culture for work-life balance? Okay. Well, I think it starts by example, actually leadership example. And as a woman or female investor, but also a mom of a very young son, personally, right, I constantly have to balance personal life, family life, and professional life. And I think in the team, we openly talk about the challenges that come with trying to find that balance, how we can support one another when somebody has an emergency, and frankly, whether they're a father or a mother, like in the household, it doesn't matter. Like for everybody, it's equal. I think that's very important. And be embracing basically of the reality that all of us have these multitudes, identities and personalities and obligations, responsibilities in our daily lives. And starting by acknowledging, recognizing, supporting each other, being open, talking about it in the workplace, I think already contributes to a culture that is much more accepting. I sometimes, early days of our fundraising for this fund was travel to Kenya with a 5-month-old and was very open. I was like, sorry, I can't do this team dinner tonight because I have to breastfeed, right? And yet I was there, I was present and adjusting basically to this new reality of having a newborn, but yet still, achieving everything that was necessary, like for the team. So I think it really means a lot when there's leadership by example, and when there's openness and a lot of support around the reality that we all have to juggle with all those balls, right? Juggle the multiple responsibilities and identities.
Thank you so much, Maëlys, for this very precious comment. So thank you so much. We just have 1 minute left. So Lamia, if you want to just like showcase the last slide with the QR codes. So just for the participants, this webinar was organized by Sisters. So if you're interested to get any insights or information about Sisters, please scan the contact us QR code. And if you're interested to become a Sisters mentor, please scan the QR code as well. We'd be happy very happy to have you part of our community. As a closing word, thank you so much for our 3 panelists, Shalini, Carrie, and Maëlys. It was a real pleasure to have you. Thank you for your time, for your precious insights that I think were only very helpful for us to reflect and get a better understanding of how the scene is looking like. So thank you so much for this. Really appreciate it, and hopefully we'll get more opportunities to discuss this type of topics more, and potentially one day we won't need to discuss that anymore because it would be just like history and everything would would just be perfect. But thank you so much. It was a real pleasure, and thank you to everyone who was in the audience.
Well, thank you so much, Sabrina and
Thank you.
Sundar. Yeah, and it was a wonderful discussion with the fellow panelists. So absolutely enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you
everyone.
all.
Thank you. Bye.